Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bow Shed. Right now, I had a few emails saying a little dispute on what I run on my bow and what I should run on my bow. It was kind of interesting, but we'll just break that down. Um, we're going to talk about sights between multi-pin and single pin sights. I run a single pin, but there is a discussion out there, maybe a little bit even an argument that single pins are made for more target, and I know a lot of hunters are still they're running a single pin as well as I am, but there's a lot of guys that no, multi pin's the best way to do it because you don't have to chase tapes, and that's chasing tapes is kind of something I just say it. They call it. There's a couple other ways to say it, but what I mean is when an animal quarters out, you're gonna have to re-range and redial. That's pretty much what it is. Either if it went closer or quartered out. That's not the case. There is a part 2 video to this, kind of. I mean, it's just a secondary video that's going to continue on with the single pin, and there's going to be a little trick that I show how I figure everything out. Once I get everything tuned in, then I'm going to redo everything yardage wise, but you're going to need a couple tools. You're going to need a paper, pin, a tape measure, obviously some arrows, obviously your bow, and do some shooting. But to get back on our discussion on what's better, single pin or multi pin, I don't care what you run. I just run a single pin. There's a lot of advantage for it for a single pin. I mean, they're pretty, when you sight one in. I mean, it's right there. You range 21 yards, you dial to 21 yards. It's pretty simple. Now, we'll talk about the multi-pin first before we get into my single pin. Multi-pin, I know most hunters know what a multi-pin is, so don't yell at me. But just to compare the two, it is multi-pin. They're pretty easy to usually dial. They've got a couple screws right here for up, down on each pin. Got your left and right, and this one's just a $30 one, but they do range up. The great thing about a multi-pin is you can go all the way down to these $30 ones to, I mean, all the way up to the $250 range. So there is some really high-end multi-pins out there. And before we talk about the single pin I'm running, I'm going to throw in that there is another sight out there, and I call it kind of the hybrid. It's a single pin multi-pin, which it's pretty cool. It wasn't for me. I almost bought one. It wasn't for me. What it is your whole housing slides just like mine does, but then it's got a couple multi-pins in that housing. Then you run off your last pin. So if this was it, you would run off this last pin, this housing would slide, and then that's when you'd get your other yardages. I mean, it was kind of cool. My biggest thing is, like, when I show you this one, is the clarity through the sight. That's it. One post. So when I draw my bow back, my sight picture is so clear when it comes to shooting anything, target or animal. Like, I have that big time, and I shoot with both eyes open anyway, but when I do, I almost don't see anything but that post. So, like, I can see pretty much the whole area that I'm looking at, and I still have that post just floating around. So I can always, I like that. It's very enjoyable. This one is a Spot Hogg Fast Eddy double pin. And this one's been kind of through the ringer a few times. They originally came out the Fast Eddy, which was the style like this. It just bolted onto your bow, had the dial. Great setup. It was a single pin, not a double pin. And I'll tell you what the double pin is in here in a minute. But then, and then they had this pointer for your strips. It was just like, it's kind of one of those things that kind of bugged me because I did pay some pretty good money at that time for the Fast Eddy. Well, actually, all their Spot Hogg products were that way. And you're paying all this big money, and it was a piece of chicken wire. which was a pain in the butt because you could move it easily. You could just put your finger on it and bend it a little bit, and it would go up or down. I mean, yeah, that was kind of fun. So you really had to make sure you took care of this side where the wheel was, especially in a hunting situation. If you were in target and you lost an arrow because of that moved, whatever. But I mean, that could have been big time. You smoke a limb, bend that just a little bit, and then you go after an animal because a little bit goes a long ways. I mean, you can tell how close these numbers are, and I'm not shooting that fast. Like I don't have that. I'm not a speedbow guy. I'm about in between. I like a heavyish arrow, but not too heavy, where I'm running some good speed still. So I'm like, I shoot around. I think the arrow build that I did this time with the 50 grain inserts, I'm running about 431, I think 431 grains. Yeah, 431. So that's usually my goal is usually in the 420 to 430. So, pretty happy with that. These ones will be for my elk season. But anyway, off topic. The single pin Fast Eddie double pin. It's what they mean by double pin is this has a red as your primary. I chose that. And then a green for your secondary. Now the secondary is just drilled into it, and a little piece of fibers fit through it. That doesn't. It's just, and then it comes down and wraps. Does its fun stuff. But anyway, I don't feel like all these that I've seen, the secondary was either yellow, the red. You can get blue. What's cool when you order one of these, you can design it how you want. When you call them like, hey, I want my primary this, and I want my secondary this color. Before you yell at me, the red, people probably are like, why did you do your primary in red? The secondary on almost all of these guys' sites, to me, it might be my eyes, but it wasn't bright enough. So like, your primary, let's say you ran your primary as a green, it was overpowering your secondary. So if you ever needed your secondary, you couldn't see it hardly. Or if it was like, especially when the sun's coming, and you're looking at, say that 8:30, 9 o'clock, where that sun's really peeking out of that horizon, going in, that maybe more like 9:30, but it would, you had the sun hit that sight. Whew, your primary was so bright that you couldn't see the secondary if you even wanted to. So, well, how this works is you sight in your primary. The secondary does nothing. It's like I said, it's just a drilled spot, and they fibered it up. So you sight in your primary by floating this up and down, find your 20 and your 60. And they will give you a nice little tape strip for that, for a sight in. What they did, though, is why it's a double pin, is they also, the new upgrade-ish, I think it's been a year or two now, but they mathematically figured this out. So here's your primary, there's your secondary, and it's just one piece. And it's nice, not chicken wire anymore. It's nice and nice little washer and Allen bolt and aluminum. It's pretty great. So, being that said, I can dial to, let's say 70 yards. My double pin, my primary or my secondary is actually set to 80. Now, I've never killed an animal with the secondary. I mean, I do like it because it's an option, but I've never killed an animal with that. I have tried it in a 3D course or even at my house. I will dial the secondary pointer to a yardage, and I'll just go like, I don't know, let's dial to 55 yards, 45 yards. And I'll step to that 45, and I mean, it's off by inches. I mean, an inch and a half. But that could be me because you're not running technically off a point. You're not running technically off a point of a pin like this. You're running right in the middle of it. So you're kind of judging that where that pin needs to set. So, I mean, like I said, that could be me, but it's there. Their math is pretty right on the money. Now, their strips are pretty on the money. I have found a few. I think if you mess up, this is I'm going to preach this a little bit. So, like, I just got done resighting in again. I just didn't like the way my arrows were just a little bit low. You can usually fidge that a little bit. So I said, you know what, it's probably good just to shoot your bow anyway and re-sight in. So I did. I stripped completely back down, 100%, put a practice strip in, shot midday. And this was my last video, or a couple videos ago, I was preaching that you need to shoot your bow through multiple times of the day. So the next morning I got up thinking everything was okay. Well, to come find out I was still shooting low. And it wasn't the strip number I put in, it was the way I think I was seeing the pin. And I mean, it wasn't bad low. I just have to, this is kind of a cool little feature too, is once you find, let's say you were shooting 40 yards, but you ended up having to dial about 43. Right? Let me just bump it. And then you were shooting pretty good money again. But notice that, take a note in your head, run back to 60 again and see if you're shooting low at 60. If you're shooting low at 60 where you have to dial about 61, maybe 62-ish, and you're consistently low, what's kind of cool at Spot Hogg is they give you this little nut and you can loosen this. So go either at 61 or go right back to that 40 spot again, go back to where you felt like it was money again, and then you just slide this sucker up just a little bit. Pretty cool, but you got to be consistent in multiple yardages. It can't be just because it's short on one set of yardages and great on the other set. You have to make sure the sight is low through the whole process. And then you just dial back to where that was, where you thought your 40 was, shoot it. If it's still low, okay, cool. Come back in, just adjust that up to, so then what you do is then you'll just adjust this side. So it's pretty cool. Now, pros and cons, before we end this video real quick. Multi-pins, they can be light. That $30 one I got here it's doesn't weigh anything, and you could kill an elk with this. So the single pins, they're heavy. They got a lot of mechanics. I mean, and what's super nice about this one is dovetailed. I notice a lot of them are that way now. I mean, HHA makes one. My dad has it, and it's even heavier than the Spot Hogg. So I liked his. There's if I kind of wish I had it, I'd show you. I do like his because there is a feature that I really do like that I kind of wish Spot Hogg do, and they might in the future. But right now, this is kind of their simpler single pin. That's what I do like, is simple. So. Well, what's cool about his is he can actually pull his bull wheel off here and have a whole nother bull wheel ready to go for a different set of arrows. That's pretty cool. I just didn't like how, obviously the more junk you add, it's going to get heavier. Which is okay, you just kind of eliminate some of your weight on your stabilizer. If you eliminate too much weight on the bottom stabilizer, this is your stabilizer and it's up top. And so it kind of shoots goofy, in my opinion. But so there's single pins. There are really not too many cheap ones. I mean, they're going to start off pretty on the high side and go even higher. And then you got to really be careful what you look for. I've played with a couple. My brother was kind of in that mode. He doesn't like the whole idea of chasing tape, so I kind of was leaning him towards the hybrids. Because I think they're great. I don't know if they still make it. I think I Googled it yesterday for him and I couldn't find it, so correct me if I'm wrong. But Trophy Taker had one, and it was a multi-pin with a floating pin in there. The housing didn't move, the pin did. And you opened up the housing, you could see your pin move up and down. It was kind of cool. I almost bought it, but I decided to go this route. HHA makes a really great single pin. The only one that I'm not gonna I don't want to try to bash them, is Trophy Ridges. I feel like they're tanks, man. They're heavy, and especially there's a couple out there they make that are just, they're heavy. And because I do like Trophy Ridge, when I started getting into archery, that's what I had, was a Trophy Ridge. So I don't want to bash them. I really enjoy their products, but some of their products, you'll find that you'll throw it on, and they're great sights, man. But if you want that extra weight. So that's what I'm saying, I guess. It's like, in a way, not to bash them, is they are great. I just didn't want the weight. So there is a disadvantage and advantage. Now, the advantage, the part 2 video, that's going to be coming out is going to be setting your pin and walking some distances. It's almost the same idea with a little bit more math for you. And I think you don't have to do the math. You can just shoot this. When I show you this, you can just do it and know. But I feel my little tip is when you do the math, you're physically seeing the numbers. Once you physically see the numbers, I feel like they get more locked in your head instead of, well, I think it can shoot this. It's nice to kind of know your numbers. And it's, you got to shoot your bow. I mean, that's the point, right? So shoot your bow anyway. So this time, just do some numbers. If you need help, you know, have a spouse, have your partner help you. You know, if you and your buddy are running single pins, both of you do it for both your bows. So that's kind of my discussion with single pins, multi pins. I don't believe there's any wrong way. I do believe single pins are better, my opinion. Just like I said, the sight pictures are clear. You get way more advantage. Spot hog will, I shoot around my town. I tell people I shoot 100 and they're just blown away. It is a little tricky, but it's not that bad. Spot hog strips, they're really very well built. You can dial out to 100 if you have the clearance, and you can hit target at 100 yards. So a lot of people are asking how I'm doing it, because I think they're still thinking, when it's a lot of the older people that shoot that I talk to, I think is because they just run multi-pins and they're thinking, how are you getting 100 yards? It's really not. It's not a trick that I do. It's just that I can dial, and I got the clearance. I'm actually cleared to 120. I have the clearance to 120, which the only bad thing about that, to get that 120, I had to stretch my peep a little bit. I had to do a whole lot of different stretches. Like I had to move the sight. Everything had to be a little bit high right off the gate. This way, when I'm running way low, I can get them clearances. I could probably push 125 before I hit fletchings, but nah. I mean, after 120 on my bow, it falls on its face. Now 100 I can do pretty decent. The best group I've got at 100 was 6 inches, and I don't know if it was a couple fluke days, because I've got it a couple times. But it's kind of cool. It's a little confidence builder. If you can shoot 100 and shoot really good, pretty consistent at 100. My most consistency is pretty much right at 80. After 80, I kind of have to really, really pay attention. So that's just me. I think it's more or less the bow setup. If I think I ran obviously a lighter arrow and faster, I could really push some speeds and probably be way more consistent at 100. But by the time my heaviest arrow I'm only like a 27 and 27.5 inch draw length. So I'm not getting, that's kind of my handicap. So I'm going to have to go up to, and my bow's only a 65-pound bow. So if I push that 70 mark with that 27.5, I'd probably be better off. I could really push them. And that's my next year's project. I didn't want to change bows this year just because. But again, another rabbit hole. The 2 sights, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I don't think it matters. It's just what you guys like. Again, I preach this. This is a personal preference game. Either if you're an archery, just a target shooter, or a hunter, which I'm both. I go to these 3D ranges to practice for hunting. And it's a good time. There's a whole bunch of other archers out there, so you always bounce ideas, see what they're running, gear. If you haven't been to one, and I know this year was probably the worst to see if you guys could get on one because of the COVID. But man, it's a good time. But you guys can hit me up, see what you think, because I have ran and played with a bunch of multiple pin sights and a whole bunch of the singles. I fell in love with the Spot Hog. I would say my second place. There's a couple other ones out there. Now, there is a couple that I can't think of the name of, and I'm probably going to get butchered for, because there is a couple that are really on the high ends, and people just love them cool. It's not what I was looking for. I didn't need the micro up and down. This does micro left and right, which is cool, but I didn't need the micro up and down. I am a hunter. I am not sitting there trying to find that 12 ring every time. I think my next video will probably be out I don't know, in a couple days. I got some editing, because this is kind of I have to stop recording and, set up, and so it's not just a continued flow of video. But yeah, hit me up. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna go do some shooting, start on this video, so it'll be out here soon. It's just a cool little tip when you get on the trailhead where you should set your bow. And the reason you don't want to go off of mine is every bow is different. Every bow is a little faster, slower, different setups. So that's why you need to do the math or write down these numbers when you start doing it. And yeah, you'll be like, oh, I get what you're doing. And it just starts becoming another muscle memory once you learn your sight. Once you get your sight and everything's learned, you're like, I can do this. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. So, all right, guys, appreciate it. I'm pretty sure I will, on that video though, little side note, it will be on YouTube, and I will make on Instagram and 307 Shooters. You'll have a little clip of it. This way you guys know to go to YouTube to watch the full video, because it's probably going to be pretty close to, a little longer than this one. This one's probably close to 20 minutes right now. So it's probably going to be more in the 45 minutes, because I don't want to rush everything. But then again, I'm going to not show everything, because you'll start to understand. So thanks, guys. Stay tuned in.